Is Twitter less influential of the real world than we give it credit? Are some publishers ignoring podcasting because it's not financially relevant for them? Will physical experiences outshine digital activations this year for big brands? We'll dig into these trending topics and more on the Business Management Podcast at the intersection of marketing, technology, media, and popular culture. It's called Disruptive FM. Roll the title.
It's Disruptive FM. Disruptive FM. Disruptive FM. Welcome to Disruptive FM, where business and culture collide. Sponsored by Microsoft and Branding Strategy Insider. With your host, Jeffrey Colon.
Okay, here we go.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Disruptive FM. This is episode 61. I'm Jeffrey Colon, head of brand studio for Microsoft Advertising. Thanks for hitting the play button. On the way, 3 trending topics to sort through. And we'll also hear from Adrian Belina, Executive Creative Director at Jam 3. It's gonna be a hot one. Let's dive in.
Here are this week's trending topics. Delete the tweet.
Twitter is especially loved by the press, and the unfortunate affinity that journalists and policymakers have for the social network means that, as with politics itself, you may not care about Twitter, but it cares about you, especially if you've just done something embarrassing on national television. According to a 2019 analysis by Pew Research Center, 22% of adults in the U.S. use Twitter, but just 10% of those adults are responsible for 80% of tweets. In other words, Twitter exerts power on our public discourse with a small circle of undersized influencers. Because journalists are hooked on Twitter, they often, make that constantly, write news stories about things that happen on the platform. Our biggest problem is this phenomenon. Something happens on Twitter. Celebrities, politicians, and journalists jump in and talk about it, and it's circulated to a wider audience by Twitter's algorithms. Then, of course, journalists write about the dust-up. They often present the subject as a debate roiling the country or the world, when it's really just an argument taking place inside the journalist's Twitter feed. Regular people are left with a confused, agitated view of our current political discourse, and in many cases, of our fellow human beings. I know that making the argument that journalists should largely quit Twitter may sound drastic, but is it? In order for our world to move forward, we may need to cast a wider, more inclusive net. The democratic culture we think is representative on the platform is not really democratic at all. Some people using it are having a good time and influencing each other. But the distorted, often ill-prepared arguments and firestorms are generally not helpful or informative for the rest of us. Twitter is simply a professional wrestling script come to digital life, with its faces and heels to boot.
Trending topics on DFM. Pass the mic.
A ton of money is pouring into podcasting as platform companies and advertisers express more interest in the medium. But for smaller publishers that have been experimenting with this audio format, the increased competition for listeners, and by extension, advertising dollars, is prompting them to change their approach. Podcast reach is already fairly small compared to other media types. The majority of the consideration when evaluating the best podcasts to advertise is focused on the shows and networks with the largest reach. Of course, that makes sense. The competition is compounded by the fact that advertisers and listeners now expect higher production values from podcasts. Yeah, you heard that correct. Where a publisher might once have been able to get away with recording a show in a coat closet, advertisers and listeners now expect better production quality and more format variation. It's no longer just, hey, let's grab a microphone and interview some people. The interview was a go-to idea because it's so simple. Heck, we use it on DFM, but it's not our entire format. The problem with the interview format is it's incredibly saturated. Everybody's doing it. Some publishers have seen this and may be venturing back into another world that is reminiscent of the 1990s and requires less production costs. Yup, the email newsletter. And no headphones are required.
Trending topics on DFM. Are you experienced?
Experiential is all the rage these days. And this may be due to the fact digital is so poorly designed and mired with ugliness. We want the beauty that the real world can provide. How does the saying go? We used to go on the internet to escape the real world. Now we go out into the real world to escape the internet. Our next guest is all about building things for us to experience. He's done a lot of this work for Adidas, Microsoft, Spotify, Toyota, and UNICEF, to name a few. Adrian Belina is Executive Creative Director at Jam 3, and he was kind enough to join us on Microsoft Teams last week to talk about the physical world and all things experiential in marketing and why it still matters. Let's take a listen.
I think the interesting thing for us when speaking about any sort of project or campaign is really starting with the core of a single idea or a single thought or theme. And then from there, sort of wrapping it into every which direction you can possibly go in, and not just using that another medium to recap the story of what we did, but how to wrap it all up into the same story so that they're all being a part of it. I think for the launch of the 2019 Oswego for Adidas Originals, our main central idea here centered around this notion from a saying that Adidas Originals has called "the past empowers future." And so the Oswego is actually a shoe from 1998. It's an archival shoe. One of our core thinking here was, well, wouldn't it be interesting to take this shoe, which now looks totally different, and to really double down on that futurism? And so the thinking here became talking about the shoe as a future classic and imagining a world 50 years from now where we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the current shoe. And from here on in, all of our ideas started to wrap in around this. We knew we had an event. The key things that we needed to think about were, how do you surprise a group of people who are all at the forefront of trends and who have seen and heard it all? How do we get people to the event? How do you ensure safety? And then that you don't have a mob of people who are looking to, have access to this new shoe or free shoe. How do you extend things beyond the event? And then also, how can you always push things creatively as far as you can with the time you have to create it? Going back to how people would access this, the social campaign started off was taking that hint from like something that you would get from a bodega. And so on social, people would, we posted this to the Adidas Originals account, and you would see one of those like classic scratch and wins, right? And so if you scratched and win that, you would see a code and a number that you would get to text. And that's the thing that would actually point you towards the event and this exclusive event that ran for one day only. We always think about things as to, events are expensive, but this is where the current state of, I think, experiential marketing is with brands. Brands are heavily invested and have a lot of desire for experiences because this is a unique way to reach and connect with people. So a lot of brands are looking, people are looking actually, to connect with brands in a more interesting way. So as brands start to do these experiences, it's important to always think about like, how, I guess, are we providing surprise and delight for users? And then when you think about the people that are at the event, you also it makes you think about all the people who can't be at the event. And so how do you loop those people into the story? So for us, it was a matter of including those people in along social, and then also creating a website, which also spoke to about the wormhole to the future, which we found a partner in. And instead of doing a microsite on Adidas's website, we launched the website in partnership with Hypebeast so that it felt like it was a futuristic style article. And the shoe basically was a part of that whole experience as well. I think one of the main focuses when doing any event is really how can you translate the event online so that everybody can be wrapped into the same thematic story.
The physical experience of a moment becomes ingrained in our collective memory. Way more than a banner ad. Adrian Belina, Executive Creative Director at Jam 3.
It's Disruptive FM.
Communications.
The Business Culture Podcast.
They say if you listen closely, you can hear the sound of today.
Disruptive FM, the culture of business. I'm Jeffrey Colon. Thanks for being here. We would love to connect with you. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Disruptive FM. Or connect with me personally at DJGEOFFE. Big shout out to our sponsor partners, Microsoft Advertising, Intelligent Connections. Create smarter customer journeys in the era of customer-centric marketing. Learn more at microsoftadvertising.ai. And Branding Strategy Insider. Branding Strategy Insider serves 50,000 plus senior level marketers, CMOs, and business decision makers daily. And is distributed by partners such as The Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Google News, and Forbes. Branding Strategy Insider is the leading resource for thought leadership in brand strategy and brand management. Learn more at brandingstrategyinsider.com. And Iographer. Iographer creates accessories for your mobile device to help you make better videos. Their cases allow you to attach filmmaking accessories like microphones, tripods, and lenses, and help you to stabilize your video and look like a pro. And they won't bust your budget either. We use them a lot on our videos that we make for Disruptive FM. Learn more at iographer.com. In the background, music from Monodeluxe featuring Jaidene Veda. It's a track called Don't Stop. The Mark Francis mix. It's out now on Vibe Boutique Records.
And now, Disruptive FM presents... What? What kind of shit is that? Come on!
Brandless, a retail brand that offered hundreds of products at a price point of $3, shut down a little more than 2 years after its launch. Despite a promised $240 million investment from SoftBank's Vision Fund in 2018, Brandless was unable to compete in the fiercely competitive retail market. Brandless offered everything from beauty and hair products to grocery staples and kitchen gadgets, all for $3, eliminating markup for distribution and marketing in its direct-to-consumer model. It also attracted a lineup of investors that included NBA star Stephen Curry and author Jessica Seinfeld. At the time of SoftBank's announcement in July 2018, Brandless was valued at $500 million. Now it's closed. Even PricewaterhouseCoopers said at the time of its investment, these brands are eliminating the inefficiencies in the consumer value chain and are simply reshaping the future of retail. Well, not so much anymore. The problem is psychologically, Brandless is at odds for why people secretly like brands and branding. Branding and brands allow them to make a decision when faced with a choice or a paradox of choices, so they don't have to think about them. I think this is ultimately what Brandless was after, but you don't want every product you own to look like it came out of the generic aisle of a 1970s supermarket. Sometimes brands help us with the paradox of choice. Now Brandless is no longer a brand. Oh, the irony. And to this, we say...
What? Come on!
Okay, here are a few stories that are starting to create some buzz, and we think you should pay closer attention to. It's a segment we call On the Radar.
Here's what's on our radar. Number 1.
Japan has learned that not all robots are built to replace humans in the workplace. Many people in the country have embraced robots as helpers. For example, a Tokyo office building uses a robot to patrol the halls, feeding video to human guards. At a nursing home in the city, a robot assists staff to recall patient-specific data. Robots may soon be commonplace as they become increasingly familiar workplace fixtures. Japan may be a model for their adoption on the job.
Number 2.
It may be a digital world, but printed catalogs have managed to grow in popularity over the last few years, and consumers are really into it. According to a recent report, response rates from catalogs rose 170% between 2004 and 2018, with both digital and mailed catalogs helping brands lift sales. why do these still work? The traditional marketing tools help customers visualize how they'd use or experience products, making them appear more vivid.
Number 3.
YouTube is looking to take on a gatekeeper role, like cable operators in the traditional television world. Oh geez, everything is a remix. The Google-owned video colossus is negotiating with film and television companies to offer subscriptions through its platform. The move would see the company directly target Apple TV and Amazon channels by allowing subscribers to sign up for outside streamers like HBO or Showtime via YouTube to amplify its power and market share. Okay, that's going to do it for DFM, episode 61. Big thanks to our guest, Adrian Belina of Jam 3. Next week, we speak with Rick Farman, talking all things new with marketing on the festival concert circuit. Yeah, we're going to talk music. As always, thank you for your time and attention. Help us out in our quest for world domination by rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the show. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Pandora. One more time, you can follow us on the socials, Twitter and Instagram at disruptivefm. And of course, check out cool content from our sponsors at MicrosoftAdvertising.ai, RatingStrategyInsider.com, and iographer.com. Until next time, from everyone here at DFM, I'm Jeffrey Colon. We'll catch you next week.
You've been listening to Disruptive FM with Microsoft Communications designer Jeffrey Colon. All thoughts are his own. Disruptive FM is produced in Los Angeles by Feeler Media.